Welcome everyone to the online version of the Learn to Burn 1 class. My name is Morgan Metter and I'm your host today. And today we will be discussing weather with Clint Johnson. Clint is a private lands biologist with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission out of the Mayflower office. Thank you so much, Clint, for joining us today. We look forward to hearing your presentation. So I'm going to let you go ahead.
Well, Morgan, thank you for doing all these recordings for us. I'm glad that there's smarter people in the world than me. So fire weather. So this surprises a lot of people. We're in a class talking about prescribed fire. So why are we spending so much time on weather? We're actually going to spend more time on weather today than on any other topic. Fire weather is very, very important to us with prescribed fire. So the weather is going to determine what fuels are available. So it's going to determine if the fire is going to burn or not, and it's going to determine how the fire behaves. So you hear that term fire behavior. That has to do with the speed of the fire moving and the height and the temperature. So all the things to do with how the fire acts in the environment. And our ability to select the day that we want to burn, to control the match, to select when we want to light the fire, is the difference between wildfire and prescribed fire. So wildfire happens when it wants to, prescribed fire happens when we want it to happen. And the weather determines how we're going to be able to get rid of our smoke. So from a safety standpoint, a lot of people are worried about controlling a fire and fire getting out and damaging other property. And that's obviously a concern. But the vast majority of fires do not escape, very, very small percentage, and very small percentage of those causing damage. However, every fire makes smoke. So the ability to disperse safely smoke is very important to us, as well as weather determines what habitat objectives we're able to accomplish, determines how we are going to fire out the units. You'll hear talk about firing strategy. Determines how we're going to supply crew safety, and without a doubt, weather is one of the most important parts of prescribed fire. So a lot of the variables that I'm going to present to you have hard and fast numbers to them. We will look at some ways to estimate fuel moisture, but the question we have to ask ourselves, is it dry enough? There's some data there that we can look at, but really this is very subjective. So fuels need to be pretty dry and crisp. So you need to be able to get out in the woods and grab the fuel, if that's grass or if that's pine litter or hardwood leaf litter. Rub that around in your hands. Does it bend or does it snap? Does it have a crisp feel to it, or does it feel damp? So in general, you're going to be looking for at least a day or two after a rain event for grass, and 3 to maybe 5 days after a rain event for leaf litter. So that's going to be a very wide range depending on how much it rained, how long that rain lasted. Was it a heavy rain? Was it a slow rain? The soil moisture. Getting a 1/4 inch of rain in a drought is very different from getting a 1/4 inch of rain when it's been raining every day. Temperature, there's a lot of things that play into that. These are all general rules. And in general, we can burn a fuel when its moisture level is about 10%. So just keep that number in mind, about 10% fuel moisture, and that fuel is going to burn. Well, obviously, we don't want things too dry, so we don't want a fire that's out of our control. So we want kind of a Goldilocks zone here of dry enough but not too dry. And again, all this is dependent on a lot of things: temperature, sunlight, wind, what kind of fuel. Red oak leaf litter dries at a different rate as post oak leaf litter. So we're just skimming the top with this presentation. There's a lot to unpack here. One general rule that we like to use is the dusty roads and the wet ditches rule. So to get a feel for what that Goldilocks zone is between too wet and too dry, think about driving down a dirt road and kicking up dust behind you and still seeing some water in the ditches. So that zone there, it rained a few days ago, but it's not too dry yet. It's kind of what we're looking for with prescribed fire. So where do you go to get your fire weather? We're going to go to this website at the end of the talk. But the National Weather Service is kind of the clearinghouse for prescribed fire weather. they have a prescribed or a wildland fire weather expert in each National Weather Service office. And for most of the state of Arkansas, it's going to fall under the Little Rock office. But if you go to weather.gov and click on their map, it'll take you to the office that forecasts your area. But we're going to kind of assume most of the people watching this are going to be out of the Little Rock office. That's the LZK ending here. So you go to that main website, look at the bottom of the page, and you see where it says local fire page. You're going to click on that. And it's going to take you to this clickable map. So you click on the county that you're in. After you click on your county, it's going to pull up this text page. And this looks scary, but I promise this is not as scary as it looks. So we happen to click on Marion County here just as an example. This is not today. So starting up here at the top, we've got a discussion. So this is kind of rare in the weather world. This is written by a human being that's actually in the state of Arkansas. So this is just kind of in layman's terms, what's going to be going on the next 2 or 3 days. And we're about to go through a bunch of the variables kind of one by one. And I want to make sure that you're aware of our weather prescription and our burn plan. So each one of these variables, they're going to have, again, that Goldilocks zone that we're looking for. And we're going to have a range of variables defined in our burn plan. So keep in mind that when we're going through this, looking for a good burn day for a unit, we're going through and checking these boxes. If anything falls outside of this box, these ranges, that's called outside of prescription. So that's not a viable burn day because it's not within the days that we define, we set aside that we were going to burn. So we're looking for a day that fits within all these boxes that's quote in prescription. So we're going to go kind of top to bottom on that weather page and unpack each one of these. The first one's kind of obvious. So cloud cover. Obviously, we don't do a whole lot of burning when it's raining, when it's incredibly cloudy. So in general, we're looking for clear to mostly clear. You may get away with partly cloudy, kind of depending on the time of year and your burn unit. Obviously, we don't want a lot of precipitation on a rain during a burn. Rain after a burn is great because that makes mop up easy. We'll talk about mop up in another presentation. One thing we're also going to want to dodge is thunderstorms. So thunderstorms come with erratic and quickly changing winds. Which we don't want on a burn. We want our winds to be very predictable and steady. And thunderstorms don't always come with rain. So always look for the chance of thunderstorms on your fire weather forecast. So if we keep going down, we get to temperature. So in many of these, you're going to see in parentheses here, 24-hour trend. And what that means, that's the change from the previous day. So if we look at this category for today, we see that the highs is going to give us highs for the daytime periods and lows for the nighttime periods. So the high for today is 35 degrees, and that's 13 degrees lower than what it was yesterday. Therefore, it was 48 degrees as a high yesterday. And the target that we're looking for, it's a huge range, of course. So we generally don't want to burn what's below freezing because water is one of our biggest tools to control fire, and water gets kind of difficult to deal with below 32 degrees. And most of our prescriptions are going to cut off at 90 or 95 degrees. It just gets difficult to be out there being around fire when it's too hot. The next variable we're going to look at is maximum/minimum RH, that's relative humidity. So humidity is the opposite of temperature. So humidity tends to go down as temperature goes up. So for daytime periods, we're going to see a low forecast relative humidity. And during nighttime periods, it's going to go up. So again, we have that 24-hour trend. So today the forecast is 59, and that's 7% lower than it was yesterday. Tonight, high relative humidity of 88. And our target, somewhere between 30 and 40% relative humidity. That kind of varies depending on the time of year and the fuels that you're burning. If you're burning grass in an open field, you may get away with higher relative humidities. So our next variable that we're going to talk about is our wind. So we see here forecast a 20-foot wind in the morning, 20-foot wind in the afternoon. So the 20-foot, what that means is in meteorological terms, wind is measured and forecasted 20 foot above the ground or whatever's covering the ground. So this direction here, northwest, winds are measured from named from the direction of origin. So it's wind coming out of the northwest, 6 to 10 miles an hour in the morning, and from the northwest, 5 to 9 miles an hour in the afternoon. So if these are winds that are 20 feet above the ground, how do we estimate what winds are actually going to be in our face and actually going to be impacting our fire behavior? So 20 foot above in a field, that would be 20 foot above the ground. In the woods, that'd be 20 foot above the top of the tree. So in general, you're going to cut that value in half for a field and in half again if you're in the woods. So what this means is our 20-foot wind in the morning, northwest, 6 to 10 miles an hour in our faces, and what's impacting the flames in open field, this is going to feel more like 3 to 5 miles an hour in a field, and in the woods it's going to feel more like 2 to 4 miles an hour. So cut that in half for a field, and cut this number in half again if you're in the woods. So what we're looking for is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 7 miles per hour at the flame length, at the flame level. And ideally, we would rather not have any gusts. We want this to be predictable. Changing between 6 to 10, that's okay. We can handle that. If there were gusts forecasted, it would say 6 to 10, and then a G, and then the number. So maybe 6 to 10, G20. So that would be a day that we probably don't want to burn if the winds are going to be unpredictable like that. We'd also rather these two directions here in the AM and the PM be pretty close to each other, so we can handle a little bit of a wind shift. Let's say from northwest to north, that wouldn't be a big deal. But if the wind is going to make a complete 180 degree or 90 degree turn from north to south, that may be a concern. Our head fire is going to turn into a back and fire at some point during the day. So we want these winds pretty consistent. So here's, if you're a visual learner, here's kind of a breakdown of what that 20-foot wind means. So let's say our forecasted wind is 20 mile an hour out of the west. So from the west, blowing east, 20 miles an hour, 20 foot above the trees, 20 miles an hour, 20 foot above this field. At eye level, out in this open field, that's going to feel more like 10 miles per hour. So that's the wind that's actually going to be impacting the flames. 10 miles an hour at mid flame is cooking along pretty good. So as you can see, that's a pretty intense fire. So we don't do a whole lot of burning in open fields when we got 20 mile an hour wind. Move into the woods again, cut that in half again. 20 mile per hour wind, 20 foot above the trees is more like 5 miles per hour in the woods. So 5 miles per hour, that's within our range. So there may be scenarios even up to 20 miles per hour that we're still burning in pretty dense woods that we know we're going to knock that wind down pretty good. The next variable here is stability class. So stability class is one of the we call composite metrics. So we're taking multiple data points, let's say maybe wind, relative humidity, maybe some other things that aren't in this forecast. It's putting it into a mathematical model and spitting out a result to help us understand how these different variables interact. So stability class measures the stability of the atmosphere. So target, we're looking for a B or a C. So you see for today, forecasted a C, which is inside our range. Tonight is forecasted E, which is outside of our range. So what does that mean? So this scale goes from A to F, with with A being extremely unstable. So an A category A or stability class A day would be a day that you would get thunderstorms. This is a day that that air can rise very rapidly. They could lead to thunderstorms. Generally, we're going to pass on days like that. I mentioned earlier that we're going to pass on days with high chance of thunderstorms. So you're going to see that a lot of these variables kind of stack. If you get in prescription on one variable, odds are you're going to be in prescription on another variable. So a day with 30 or 40% chance of thunderstorms is going to be a stability class A day. So you're going to be out of prescription on multiple variables, and that's pretty typical. There's typically not just one thing that's going to kick you out of prescription. So our blue area, our Goldilocks zone here, a B or a C, we want some instability in the atmosphere. So some ability for that smoke to rise, but we don't want too much. A stability class D day is a neutral atmosphere. So this is the day when the wind or the air does not want to rise. So this is going to act like a lid on your fire. Your fire is not going to be able to pull fresh air, fresh oxygen to perk it up, and you're not going to be able to get rid of smoke. And then stability class E and F days is a very stable atmosphere. So these are typically kind of a dreary, wet, probably rainy or at least misting winter day. So obviously that doesn't sound like a conducive, bluebird dry day that we're burning. So again, a lot of these kind of stack up. But what we're looking for is stability class B and C day. Again, this is a very high level, kind of skimming the top of our fire weather. There's a lot more weather variables that are out there, so definitely reach out to your private lands biologist, farm bill biologist, the forester with Arkansas Forest Division, somebody that knows what they're doing, that knows about prescribed fire. It can help you walk through this prescription part of the prescribed fire process. We'll also cover more weather and have more chances for questions and discussion in our Learn to Burn 2 class, a more advanced class. So definitely try to join us for one of those classes. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that today's fire is not just today's fire. So especially if we burn a forested unit, we're going to have heavier fuels, logs, big sticks and things that are burning for a few days after a burn is completed. So you're going to want to check the weather for a couple days after your prescribed burn. It doesn't necessarily have to be a good burn day. We'd actually rather it be too wet than a good burn day. We don't want dangerous, windy or dry conditions. So kind of things to avoid, cold fronts or high pressure fronts are what you want to avoid. And the reason is those bring dry air, low relative humidity, high winds. That gives potential for those stumps, those logs that are out there smoldering for several days to escape. The logs sitting there smoldering, humidity drops down, it starts burning again with an open flame, wind kicks up, sends an ember that gets outside of your burn area and causes an escape. What we'd rather look for after a prescribed fire event is a warm or a low pressure front. That's more ideal. So those typically bring rain, high relative humidity, calm wind. So that's going to be a secure fire. So ideally rain the night after your burn or a day or two after, kind of what we're looking for. So if we're looking out there in the forecast, they're calling for a cold front, they're calling for high winds to kick up a couple days after. We're going to consider that as part of this process. So maybe we're okay burning a grass unit, knowing it's going to be windy a couple days down the road because there's no heavy fuels out there to burn. But maybe we pass on a first entry burn on a forest stand that's never been burned before that has a lot of logging slash. So again, there's not hard and fast rules, but things to consider. So red flag warning. So for dangerous weather, the Weather Service releases weather warnings, so everyone knows what a tornado warning is, what a thunderstorm warning is. Red flag warning is a similar warning for high wildfire danger. So this is triggered by a specific combination of high wind, high temperature, and high humidity. So Any day that hits 2 out of these 3 criteria trigger a red flag warning. And these are released on weather radio bands and on the website. We're going to go to the weather website here in a minute, but if there's a red flag warning, there's going to be flags and stuff spinning. There's going to be no doubt that there's a red flag warning. When you pull up the fire weather forecast, it's going to say red flag warning with stars all over it. And you're obviously going to be way outside of your weather prescription anyway. So high wind, high temperature, low humidity, these things are going to kick you out of prescription on prescribed fire way before you get to this red flag status. Keep in mind that these are not the same as county burn bans. So it is technically not illegal to burn under a red flag warning, but it is a terrible idea. You're going to be way outside of prescription. We're going to be looking at a severe liability. If something were to happen, definitely negligence. A county burn ban is set by a county judge, and it is technically illegal to burn during a burn ban. So just keep in mind that these are 2 separate events, but do not burn under red flag warning. Don't even think about it. We're going to go to this website here in a minute and kind of play around at arkfireinfo.org. But here's some of the pages, some of the maps and information that you can pull up thanks to Arkansas Department of Agriculture, Forestry Division. You can pull up a map here. This is the burn bans that are active in the state. So the counties that do have an active burn ban will pop up red. Obviously, green, it does not have a burn ban. Another map is the wildfire danger rating. So this isn't based on any meteorological data or fuel moisture or anything like that. It is based simply on the opinion and experience of the Forestry Division crew in a given county. So if they've been fighting a lot of wildfires, they're going to elevate the wildfire danger rating. So low is green, obviously moderate yellow. A lot of our prescribed burning occurs during moderate wildfire danger. That's kind of the conditions that we're looking for fires to propagate on the landscape, or the same conditions you get some wildfires. We get up into these higher danger ratings, you're going to be looking at more burn bans outside of your prescription anyway. But just keep in mind that if we're starting to get into some of these counties turning yellow, that's when we're doing a lot of prescribed burning. This website also lists all the reported burns for the whole state. So this is some valuable information that can help you try to figure out this fire weather stuff. So if you're trying to learn what is good prescribed fire weather, go to the Weather Service, look down through all that list, everything's checking the boxes, and looks like a good burn day, and you pull up the Forestry Division website, this website, and you see 50 different burns listed. Obviously, it's a good day, so you pass that test. There's a lot of people burning. Must be a good burn day. If you go through every one of those boxes and think it's a good burn day and pull this up, and there's not a single person in the state burning, you might want to check back to see what you missed. So is the fuel moisture too low? Is humidity too low or too high? Whatever the case may be. So this can be a good way to kind of test yourself. Going to give a final disclaimer here. Again, we're skimming the top of a very complex topic, but I want you to understand that the responsibility to interpret the fire weather forecast, determine when is the right time to light the match, is on the shoulders of the person burning. So if that's you, then that's your responsibility. So there's no such thing as a perfect day, or very few perfect days, but you need to learn what you can live with, what kind of day that you can achieve your goals and do it safely. So what variables can you live with? What can you not live with? So what days do you need to pass on? Also keep in mind that even though a day may be technically in prescription, if several of the variables are on the intense side, so the low end of the relative humidity, the high end of the wind, even though that may be in prescription, you may want to pass on that day. So we do have a kind of stacking tolerances here. So if multiple variables are on the intense side, you may want to watch out and might want to pass on that burn day. Again, this is a very complex topic, so definitely reach out for help. So ask a private lands biologist, ask a farm bill biologist, well forever, ask somebody from the Forestry Division, a prescribed burn association. You can call up the National Weather Service. They'll definitely talk to you about fire weather. Ask somebody that knows what they're talking about that can help you unpack this pretty complex set of variables. So I mentioned earlier about some websites that were useful to you. So we're going to navigate to those real quick. We're going to go to the ARK Fire Info page first. Obviously, you can type that right in. You can also go to the Agriculture Department of Arkansas. You click on Forestry Division. And one of the first things you see here, wildfire danger, burn bans, prescribed burns. I got lighting stuff on fire. That's a good clue. And that pulls up the arcfireinfo.org website. So it defaults to the wildfire danger rating. So as I'm filming this right now, part of the state is under moderate wildfire danger. Part of it is in low wildfire danger. This part of the state got some rain in this weekend, so the wildfire danger went down there, obviously. But as you can see, counties in yellow, so fire danger increasing a bit. Had rained in a week or two, and we're doing a lot of prescribed burns right now. So counties start turning yellow. That coincides with a lot of our good burn days. We can get into too much of a good thing. We do see two counties, Cleburne and Conway here, as I'm filming this, under a burn ban. So you will get to that point when things get too dry. And we're getting there right now as I'm filming this in Central Arkansas. So let's see if there are any prescribed burns called in right now. As I'm filming this, it's 9 a.m. So it's a bit early, but there are a couple of prescribed burns called in right now. One in Columbia County gives the approximate location there, 15 acres. The firing technique here, so this happens to be probably some slash piles after timber harvest, but it would generally say backing fire or ring fire. If it's a normal prescribed burn, it actually gives you the location. And everybody always asks about this. This is the fuel loading in tons per acre, just if you're curious about that. This is a good tool to practice. If you think it's a good burn day, you've gone through all the National Weather Service information and checked every box, and you pull this up and there's no burns in the state, you might want to think, did you miss something? If there's 50 of them listed, if you have to scroll down to see the end of the list, it's definitely a good burn day. So next we're going to go to the Weather Service website. So I'm pulling up weather.gov/LZK. So this is the Little Rock office. So it just highlights here kind of what's going on in the weather. If there is a red flag warning, it's definitely going to be listed here. That'd definitely be a highlight. So we're going to scroll on down to the bottom of the page, and they do have their contact information listed right here. And these guys answer the phone. It's real human in Little Rock. They love to talk about weather. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give them a call. I've called them on several things here lately. So we're going to click on our local fire page, obviously a picture of stuff on fire if it's on. And it pulls up what I showed you. So we scroll on down and we'll click on the county that we're interested in. I'm going to click on Faulkner, where I'm at right now. So our discussion, dry conditions going to persist. And so this is not red flag conditions, but they're starting to get concerned about fire weather. We saw from Forestry Division, as I'm filming this, we're in moderate wildfire danger. So it's kind of giving us a little bit of a heads up. Minimum RH is dropping to less than 40% in many areas. Mentioned cold fronts bring a little wind. So it's talking about that. A weak cold front will drop southeast into the state. Limited chances. Typically cold fronts bring a little bit of rain, but not a whole lot. But it might bring dry and windy conditions the next day. So we see today actually looks like a pretty good burn day. Going to be a little warm. Humidity 35%. So that's within prescription. Very little wind, which is pretty typical for this time of year. As I'm filming this right now, it's early September. And well, stability class A days. This is a day that we might get some thunderstorms, although there's nothing forecasted. So I probably would go ahead and burn on a day like this. It looks pretty good. And with that cold front coming in, tomorrow's going to be just a couple degrees cooler, but 5% change in relative humidity can be significant. So 30% relative humidity is kind of on the bottom end. So tomorrow looks like almost too dry of a day to be burning. If we go back, the fire weather forecast page, we see some other good information. There's more weather here than I talked about, so we can look at drought indexes. But you can see it's pretty dry in the state right now. These yellow, orange, and red obviously is getting close to drought conditions, which explains why we're in moderate fire danger and have some burn bans. So in general, any of these maps, if it's yellow, that's kind of what we're looking for good prescribed fire conditions. So 10-hour fuel moisture, that's fuels, basically sticks about the size of your thumb to the size of your wrist. And we're looking for, I mentioned that 9-10% range corresponds to yellow. And we're getting into 7-8%, which is that orange. So we're getting almost too dry as I'm filming this right now. Anything else more you think I need to cover on these websites?
I don't think so, unless you just have something else. I think that was a good overview, at least, of how to get there and kind of what you discussed in your presentation, kind of the highlights there. I'm sure, a lot of landowners, they understand that trying to figure out the weather is very difficult. And so it's going to take a lot of practice and a lot of experience.
Yeah, and that's the key is a lot of people get freaked out by all these numbers and all these ranges that we're looking for. In reality, it's experience. It's knowing what those numbers mean on the ground, how that impacts fire behavior. That's what takes a little while to pick up.
Yeah, so it's good that we have these learn to burn classes, so people can get a little bit more familiar, but also joining a PBA.
Yes, that's very important to get in touch with people that have done this before, and learn how to replicate that on your own property.
Yeah, because a lot of people that are writing the prescriptions, like you are a person that writes a lot of prescriptions. What kind of, I guess, background, like what classes did you have to take in order to get to that level, be able to write prescriptions?
Yes, I'm burn boss certified. I'm the only PLB that's certified as a burn boss with the agency. So that means is I lead prescribed burns on our wildlife management areas and other areas as well. So that took quite a bit of training and quite a bit of weather. There's a couple weather classes in there, as well as ignition operations and learning how to put fires out, fight wildfires, that sort of thing, as well as leadership classes. But yeah, we and all your private lands biologists and many of your farm bill biologists have had some fire weather training as well.
Yeah, and I assume within your burn plans, you always have contingency plans. So when you get out there and you think the weather is okay, it looks good, and then all of a sudden it changes. And you do have tools out in the field with you to gauge the weather, which is good. But I know from my own experience being on a fire, things can change, and you just have to be on top of your game and kind of know what to look for. And that takes, again, experience being out in the field.
It does. And keep in mind that these weather prediction products from National Weather Service, these are produced by somebody sitting in office in Little Rock. So they're very good. It's the best weather forecast that you're going to get, but you're going to see variability out there in the landscape. So you may see a little bit different wind speed or wind direction because you're downwind of a hill. So there may be one specific wind direction that you get on your property that doesn't line up with what the forecast is. You know, if you get a north wind, it's actually blowing east on your place, or whatever the case may be. If you spend enough time out there on your property, you can pick that up. So definitely, if you're out there, hunting or working on the place or anything, check the weather forecast and then see if that matches what you're observing there on the ground. You don't have to have a fancy weather meter, a kestrel, to know what direction the wind is blowing, or approximately how hard it's blowing. But it does help to have those tools. You mentioned having a backup plan to fall back on. That's one thing that's always in my mind as a burn boss. A lot of times I'm showing up to burns not knowing that I'm going to be in charge on the WMA, and I get handed the burn plan of, hey, you're going to run this burn today. And my first question is always, what's my contingency plan? What's my backup fire break? So if I do have a spot fire, a fire that gets out of my burn unit that jumps my fire break, which happens all the time, what am I going to back up to? Is that going to be, and we call that a trigger point. So I know if I get a spot fire at this location, which happens to be on my boundary line, and there's a house 100 yards away, if I have a spot fire here, immediately call 911. If I have a spot fire over here that is still within my boundary, still within my property, and I know I have a disc line, a backup fire break 100 yards to the woods, well, I'm extending my burn unit. I'm going to burn out to a creek or to that backup fire break, whatever the case may be. So these trigger points of, if I have this happen here, I do one thing. If I have this happen here, then the response is completely different. But definitely always having that contingency plan is critical, because things will go wrong without a doubt. In prescribed fire, stuff will happen.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to know that if the weather changes and you don't feel comfortable burning anymore, you can stop. And so it's not like you have to get it done that day, right, if safety is a big thing.
Yeah. We showed up last week with the Quail Forever burn crew to burn 212 acres. Had 10 people on site. I actually had another agency, the Nature Conservancy, show up to help us, and found out that our control lines or fire breaks weren't what they were supposed to be, and we all went home.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely having the courage to call it off is important.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any other questions, Clint, unless you just want to add anything else, any other information that you think the landowners should know that are watching this video.
I think they've heard me talk enough.
Yeah, they're going to get a lot of talking at it when they watch these videos, but it's good. It's going to be good. And just kind of a reminder for anyone that's watching these videos, they're going to be online and available on the Quail Forever in Arkansas Facebook page and their YouTube channel. And they should be able to be found on the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission's social media platforms, just to let everyone know that they will be available there. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to your local private lands biologist or your Quail Forever Farm Bill biologist. And with that, I guess we'll end here, and we will see y'all in the next video.